Good morning and welcome to the Bill and Kelly Show. Today, our guest is Dena Carreyn, and she is an author, a public speaker, and also a survivor. Welcome to our show, Dena.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're honored to have you. And in addition to all this, which we'll speak later, is quite a successful lawyer. And so very impressed with both your career along the way and what you went through, which we're going to get into. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, Dena, where you're from and where you grew up and so on?
I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, with six brothers, no sisters,
Wow.
and they're all little brothers. So I then left, shockingly, moved to California for college. And there I studied broadcast journalism and political science. And I thought that I would be a broadcaster. I did work for NBC in Washington, D.C. for a short time, and I lived in London for a little while. And then I came back to LA and ended up going to law school kind of on a whim. Never thought I would practice law, wanted to be a legal commentator or political commentator. And my first day of law school, my criminal law professor said to me, "You are going to be a prosecutor." And I said, "No, you are on crack." And 3 years later, I became a prosecutor and ended up working in law enforcement for about 10 years. 8 of those years I spent at LAPD Central Division in the middle of Skid Row. And the LAPD SWAT force was based out of there. So we had about 600 officers at the station. And having grown up with six little brothers made me perfectly qualified to work at a police station. So I did that, loved my job, got to prosecute cases, work with victims, absolutely loved the job. And then I started working on a lot of legislation and was asked to become the legal counsel to the LA City Council, which I was doing. And then my husband and I brought our first child home from Ethiopia, and he had been in an orphanage. And basically for the first 5 or 6 months he was home, if I tried to sit him down, he would scream like someone was stabbing him to death. So I quit my job and carried a small African man around with me for a year and a half. Had the best job ever. I became a mom. And then we adopted our daughter from Southwest Missouri. It was a domestic open adoption. And a year later, we decided to relocate to the Midwest. My husband had been working in Madison, Wisconsin a lot, and he had brought me to Madison, Wisconsin to visit in the summer and fall. And then we moved here in the middle of January during a blizzard. And coming from Southern California, I was like, what are we doing?
Why am I back in this kind of weather?
But since we've been in Madison, I've continued to go through some personal trauma. And, working on that, of course, working through PTSD and different issues, and working on a lot of charitable causes as well. And I was telling Bill before we went on air, one of the big traumas that happened was when my daughter was 3 years old, her kidneys suddenly failed. She went into the hospital. She was in a coma for 3 weeks. They told us she probably wasn't going to make it. We went through 2 years of dialysis and chemo and not knowing if she was going to live or not. And I thought that whole time, I need to do something with this. I need to have some sort of meaning come out of this. And the theme of that time of our lives was bravery. We watched the movie Brave when my daughter was in the hospital. We watched it every day, and we used to tell her, being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared, but you do something anyway. So I had this bravery seed or idea kind of spinning in my mind for the last couple of years. And when I sat down to really write, I said, okay, I'm going to write a book. I started as I was writing, realizing, well, this is only one trauma. I've been through all these other traumas too. And this isn't just about bravery. This is about resilience and about bouncing back and how to do that. So that's where I am today.
Yeah, and I mean, we were talking, boy, what a better time to get into this when you have a growing population out there, unemployed, not sure where their next meals are coming from. And then not knowing how this virus is going to act, how long we're going to be up in this. So I mean, it's something that
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've been talking on my website, on my blog, about the fact that really what everyone in the world is going through right now is collective grief. We're grieving. It might be the loss of our job. It might be the loss of, being able to go out to lunch with our friends or having adult conversations, or it might be the loss of, being able to go out to worship or go to a restaurant, whatever it is, that is grief. So,
and one of the biggest griefs I've noticed is people who are losing family members during this, whether it's to COVID or something else, but not being able to grieve in the way that you would normally grieve with people around you to support you.
It's heartbreaking. And we're going to see so much PTSD after all of this is hopefully when it's over, especially, medical professionals, policemen who are on the front lines. I'm friends with many of them, and I've heard over and over again how this is going to take such a long time for them to get over. And I think it's going to be so important that mental health services are offered to all of our first line workers.
Oh, definitely. It's, and there are heroes. I mean, first responders are always our heroes, but now new heroes come up, and
even
nurses,
more so now.
Nurses and doctors, they're having to deal with not having the equipment and having to go in and risk their own lives. And another thing that it just tugs on my heartstrings is I heard a nurse talking the other day about her main fear is not working in the hospital, because that's what she signed up for, and dealing with people with infections or a virus infection. That's, hey, what I signed up for. But now she's afraid to go home.
Right.
And
we're seeing first responders living in RVs in their driveways and, just taking these incredible measures to try to protect their families. And I can imagine that they're terrified.
Right. Right. So boy, what a better time. Now, why don't you, because the amazing thing about your life is what you've gone through. Do you mind sharing with us the other traumatic events that brought you to help people out?
So in my book, I talk about 7 different events that happened during my life, each of which changed me in different ways and taught me different lessons. The first thing is when I was a teenager, I was raped, but it was a date rape. It was an acquaintance, someone who I thought I could trust. This was back in I'm dating myself, but this was back in the days where we would all go to the mall every weekend, and that's where we would hang out, right? And
I'm going to date myself and tell you that when I was a teenager going to high school, that's before malls were even a thing.
Okay,
there were
right.
cornfields. Yeah, so if you're going to talk about age, you're doing it to the wrong group. Right. We're not going to be sympathetic with that.
But this guy was the manager of the local video arcade in the mall, which is where we always hung out. And I knew him, and he asked me out, and we'd known each other for a while. And we were in his car and just talking normally, and then all of a sudden it was like something he glazed over, and he said to me, "There's a ghost sitting in my back seat." I was like, "Excuse me?" At first I thought he was kind of kidding, and he said, "No, he's in my back seat. Look in the rear view mirror, you can see him too." And I was like, "Okay, check please, get me out of the car" at that point. And I kind of leaned over to look into the mirror thinking like, is he being silly? Did he put something back there to try to freak me out? And so I leaned over, and that's when he grabbed me, and I couldn't get out of the car. Afterwards, I did go to the police. I didn't go until the next day because I had so much shame. I'm thinking it's my fault. I was drinking beer and I was underage, I'm going to get in trouble. Just really going through all of that. But then the next day I thought, okay, I got up the courage. I went to the police station. I filed a report. They did not do a rape kit. They did not do any of the things that I now know as a former prosecutor would to be standard procedure. And the man was never arrested. So I think whether it was conscious or subconscious, something about that experience got me fired up to go into law enforcement, to be a prosecutor, to make sure that this doesn't happen to other women. And yeah, even if I can help one woman. So, and I did, I, was able to help rape victims. I even got one very dangerous rapist who was a multiple rapist extradited back to Oregon, where he had fled to hide from his victims and from law enforcement. So I felt like that was such a big, full circle moment for me.
So your legal career, you engaged, on that to make sure that what you went through didn't happen again to other people.
Right.
And so, yeah, and, I know Kelly's story is that through the legal process, they went free because she was a working single parent and she couldn't afford all the delays and showing up, find out that they've only again filed
I dropped
for delay.
charges, yeah.
And so she dropped charges. And and that, when that happens, there's no closure, and I don't want to speak for you, Kelly, but that's what I would feel like. There's no closure there, and there's
right.
anger that built up behind that. So that is another part of, again, brings you to where you're at today. So what about the other things? And you mentioned one already about your daughter. And
right, my daughters. I was on my 19th birthday. I was a dancer in school. I was a choreographer. I taught dance classes. And on my 19th birthday, I was on my way to teach a dance class when I was hit by an armored truck. The big trucks that carry the money that are just basically giant, right? So like jaws of life to get me out of the car. My mom pulled up on the scene and thought I was dead. It was not, and had to have multiple surgeries afterwards. And the doctors told me, you're not going to dance anymore. Like, you can't, this is not going to happen. And I thought my life was over. I was 19 and I was like, I'm going to be a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. Which, in retrospect, I'm glad that I didn't do that. And then I went to law school instead, right. But lots of lessons to be learned from all of those things, for sure.
So
the next thing was, again, I was young, early 20s, 21, and married a musician, which seemed like a great idea at the time. I was out in LA. The entertainment business was really exciting and alluring, and I was very young and naive. And I ended up getting married. During law school, I found out that the person I was married to had opened up a bunch of credit cards in my name and maxed them all out and hadn't paid anything on them in 6 months, and had taken all of the money out of our joint accounts, including the money that I needed for school. So it was the last semester. I was getting ready to enter the last semester of law school, and I literally was homeless. He left nothing. I had no house. I spent the last semester of law school living in my car because I had a job waiting for me that I worked really hard to get. And I knew that it was there, and there was nothing that was going to stop me from making it to the finish line. So I parked near the campus, and I showered in the gym there, and I brushed my teeth at the gas station every morning. And I was homeless, and it was an interesting experience that really helped me. Fast forward 10 years, and I'm working at the police station in the middle of Skid Row with all these homeless people, and to have the unique perspective of having been homeless myself really brought so much to my ability to help people there.
Wow, man. Boy, it's one thing after the other. And
one thing after the other. But you know what? I've never let the things get me down. I will take my time and I will wallow. And then I just get up, better than before. And, I love the quote from Maya Angelou that what did she say? I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be diminished by it. That's one of my favorite quotes. Yeah. And then, go ahead.
I said, that's beautiful.
It's beautiful, right?
It is.
I mean, we can't change the things that have happened, but I can say I am not just diminished, I'm a better person because of the things that I've been through.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is a horrible instance to let that define you. And you know what? Um, and it's amazing because, like homelessness, there are some amazing people now today that at one time that were homeless, and they,
Right.
some point in their life, they said, I can't do this anymore. I've got to get up and but yeah, it's the stages of things that you went through that's quite amazing. Rape, and then going through someone stealing money and stealing your identity to steal money, and then your daughter. Boy, oh boy,
And in between there, I was diagnosed with lupus and had to, stay home and be on chemo for a year to get that under control. We went through infertility, IVF, the whole deal. My lupus had destroyed my ovaries. I had no more eggs. I was like 32, and they told me you're never going to have a child. So that brought us to adoption, which, was an amazing blessing. I mean, just, yeah, amazing. And right, infertility, the lupus. I'm trying to remember if I'm forgetting anything. Lila's illness, right. So, and then my daughter, all of these things that led up to my daughter getting sick, I felt like, even though it was terrifying and awful, I also felt like I am uniquely qualified to be in this situation, to be her mother, and to have this background where no matter what, I know that I'm resilient enough to handle this. And I can teach her to be resilient and to handle this.
Yeah, and boy, especially what we're going through now. Do you ever get to the point where you hear people complaining about not being able to get toilet paper, and you just want to say, get over it?
It's for a while after, especially when my daughter got sick, for a while, if I heard people complain about their kids or something that seemed, silly.
Trivial.
It made me a little bit mad. But the more I read and the more I talked with other parents of, really sick kids and kids who had passed, and also something that I read recently that really hit home was that we talked about grief and how everyone's grieving right now, that the worst grief is always your own grief. So whether that means that you're a kid who's grieving because you're going to miss prom, that grief is no less valid than someone's grief over losing a child, because it's that person's experience. And for a lot of kids, especially, and teenagers, missing prom might be the worst thing that's happened to them in their lives so far. That might be so traumatic for them. Mm-hmm. And we can't judge that or compare traumas, like who has it worse. That's shouldn't be part of the equation.
It's where you're at that point in time and how it affects you mentally and physically.
Right.
It can be,
and everybody handles things differently, and we can't judge how someone else is handling something.
Right.
We could try to help, but we can't judge. Yeah. So all of the things that happened and led me up to the last thing, which was my lifelong best friend. We've been through thick and thin together. And just over 2 years ago, she passed away from cancer. And I had the privilege of being by her side in her final weeks and days, and going through that death of such a beautiful person was an amazing experience. It was very sad. But being there with her, I felt like was so life-changing for both of us. And the moments that we were able to share allow me to move on in my grief, knowing that we had those times. So now I'm here on the other side of that.
Yeah. So talk to us a bit about your organization that you created, that you're a famous public speaker. I saw some of your pictures that you have on your Facebook page, and so tell us a bit about what you're doing now.
So it was really after my daughter got sick that I started being asked to speak a lot. for different charities, but also at like doctors' conferences. And, you know, I've really always been a public speaker. I did acting when I was a kid and speech competitions. In law school, competed in all these mock trial competitions. I was a prosecutor and talked to the jury, and went to a lot of community meetings and talked there. So I've really always been a public speaker. I just didn't realize that I was a public speaker. So it occurred to me last year, like, hey, maybe I should start getting paid for this and start a business. And that was around the same time that the idea of the book was really germinating in my head, and kind of I was ready to write. So I started putting this business together. I'm going to be a resilience expert. I have this knowledge and I want to share it with others. So I put together a website, and the website launched about a week before the coronavirus really hit the US, which most small businesses are going through a horrible time right now, but including public speakers, because there's no meetings to speak at. But a resilience expert, this is a perfect time to be a resilience expert. It's just, it's fortuitous that it all came together right as this was getting ready to happen.
Right. And there are tools out there now, Zoom, like what we're using now, are being used for public meetings.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You can have up to 100 people on the Zoom meeting. So, and it's, what's to say what's life going to be after this? You know, it may be the way we meet in the future. So,
sure.
Boy, so, man, that's amazing. And so why don't you tell us about your website, how people can get to it, and also your Facebook page?
Yeah, my website is www.denacarreyn.com. My name is spelled weirdly. It's DenaCarreyn, but I'm sure you can also get to it through Bill and Callie's page. On Facebook,
absolutely.
On Facebook you can look it up. It's at Dena Carreyn Speaks is my business page. My website has a lot of information about my background, but also about the services that I provide, including speaking, consulting, that type of thing, and crisis management.
Yeah, boy.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we may call on you to get us out of a show or two where we have a crisis, like something doesn't work.
Give me a call anytime.
We have train wrecks, especially this morning. I had a train wreck. I meant to play a video and something else came up, and I'm like, well. You just roll with the punches. And boy, this has been amazing. We are so happy and honored that you came on our show. And the book's name?
The book's name is, hang on, I gotta look it up. It's a long title.
Oh.
Hang on.
And can I get it on Amazon?
Not yet. It's supposed to be published. Well, it's supposed to be published in early 2021. But right. I have been homeschooling my children since all of this started. And it turns out that writing a book when you're trying to homeschool for like 8 hours a day is really hard.
What?
So,
no.
Yeah, I know.
And let me say this. I saw your family on your page, and what a beautiful family. What a great family. Great family.
So the book is called Roadmap to Resilience. And there's a subtitle that I just can't think of at the moment, but I will love to tell all of you if you come to my page.
Yes, of course.
Well, we put a link to your page and your Facebook page, so everyone's good to go. Everyone's good to go. Well, gosh, thank you so much for coming on our show. We were delighted that you accepted this.
Thank you so much for having me.
And maybe we could have you back again sometime.
Anytime. I would love that.
Yeah, and again, this month is Sexual Aggression Awareness Month. And so we've been trying to highlight people's stories specifically to do that. But boy, as I told you in the email, it's hard to encapsulate just that one item, knowing what you've been through. Because it's just the whole life experience of one. I see it sounds so cliche to say one thing after another, but that's what it was that brought you to what you are today.
That's what brought me here. Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing your story with us and telling us about the speaking engagements you do. And please, the links, I've already put them up. So when we end this video, you'll be able to get right at them. and both her Facebook page and her website. And boy, is there anything else you want to share with us before we leave?
Just thank you for having me on. And if anyone sees this or listens to this and feels like they need help, feel free to reach out to me.
I do have one question, though. All right, and I notice on your Facebook page, actually the cover, there's a famous person show that you were on. Now, Kelly, pipe down, because I know she's going to say, Bill, stop it. Okay, so if you had to judge, and I guess this is completely different than the show that you were on, how would you judge the Bill and Kelly show?
I was talking about Ellen DeGeneres.
In person, if we had you on our show, we'd come out onto the stage dancing and singing, and Kelly could do both actually, but we're kind of tied. Our hands are kind of tied, so we can't be like Ellen. So I'm sorry.
The Ellen show was a really surreal experience. We when my daughter was very sick. I needed a kidney transplant. We looked all over the country to try to find a match for her, and we just weren't having any luck. And in the end, it turned out that the perfect match had been right in front of us the whole time, and it was her preschool teacher. When they told me that she was a match, they secretly recorded it, and she handed me a box, and I opened the box, and there was a note that said, I may just be her teacher now, but soon a piece of me will be with Lila forever. I'm her kidney donor. And of course I'm crying, and my mom was there and she's crying. And a week later, I put this video that they recorded up on my Facebook page for my family and friends to see. And within like 3 days, it had 10 million views. And then we had news organizations calling us from Australia and Nigeria and Norway and Hong Kong.
Awesome.
And then at the Ellen show called, we were like, what's happening? But it was so exciting to be able to use it as a platform to promote Donate Life, which is organ donation. And people don't realize that they can be living donors and really change people's lives.
Ellen does some tremendous work. I don't think people realize her work outside of being an entertainer, and it's amazing. And I'm sorry that I tried to get you to compare us. That's... But, hey, we've got a job here to do. You know what I'm saying? So.
Well, at least you got to the bottom of it.
Yeah. So, listen, I appreciate you coming on. And we'll try to wrap things up here. And, again, if you will provide the link to her book and, her website and her Facebook page. So look for them on the links with the video. And we'll say goodbye for now. Thank you, Dena. Have a great day.
Thank you, Dena.
Thank you so much. You too. I'm off to homeschool.
Exciting. All right.
Glamorous life,
Yes. And with that, folks, we'll say goodbye for now. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by Executive Suite Squared by ATG. Offering private and shared office space with 24/7 secured access, 3 state-of-the-art conference rooms, shared lounge and cafe area, receptionist, printing center, and fiber optic internet access with Wi-Fi throughout. Conveniently located just south of 8094 at the Kennedy Avenue exit at 2901 Carlson Drive in Hammond, Indiana. For information on how you can become a member, go to executivesuites2.com or call 219-844-2901. Executive Suites Squared, home to the Bill and Callie Show.